Hi guys, this is Shiva. In this session, I'm going to explain Angular versus React framework differences. Let's go ahead and start. Angular is an open source JavaScript framework for UI development. It is TypeScript based and managed by Google, whereas React is a JavaScript library for UI development. It is managed by Facebook and open source community of developers. Coming to the architecture type, Angular is component-based architecture, whereas React is a open source JavaScript framework which combined few of the features like a Flux. The next feature is data binding. In Angular, the data binding is the bidirectional is mutable data. Bidirectional sometimes looks simple, but there is a overhead on the performance because it always has to look there is any change happening on the client that has to be go and update to the model, and if there is any change happening on the model that has to rendering on the UI. So there is a performance overhead of with the bidirectional approach. In the case of React is a unidirectional. That means by in the React it is going to use the Redx, which allows you to work with immutable data, makes data flow unidirectional. Unidirectional binding is predictable, which facilitate the debugging purpose. And the next feature is the DOM, that is Document Object Model. Angular uses regular or the real DOM, which updates the entries tree structure even when the changes have taken place in a single element. The real DOM is considered to be slower and less effective than the virtual DOM. In the case of React is going to use the virtual DOM, that is virtual document object model, which enables easily implementing minor data change in one element without updating the structure of the entire tree. The framework creates an in-memory cache of data structure, computes the changes, and effectively update the DOM displaying in the browser. Now let us go to the learning part. So when you are learning the Angular, it is like a huge libraries are there. So that's the reason the learning curve for the learning Angular is going to be little bit difficult because Angular is more complex to understand. There is a lot of syntaxes and component management is there. Some of the complicated features are embedded into this framework core, which means that the developer cannot avoid learning using them. So that's the reason uh, learning wise Angular is going to be a little bit difficult because you have to understand the dependency injection, you have to understand the inversion of control, and also how the you have to map the you have to map the objects and index object at the runtime. It is little bit difficult to learn. But in the case of React is going to be minimalistic learning because it has no dependency injection, no classic templates, no overly complicated features. So this is going to be very quite simple as long as you know the basic knowledge of the JavaScript, then it is easy to learn. Now let's go to the next one. So the language, Angular is developed using the TypeScript based framework. In the case of React is developed using the JAX. That means it is JAX is an XML HTML like syntax used by the React that extends ECMAScript so that XML or HTML like text can coexist with JavaScript or React code. Unlike the past, instead of putting the JavaScript into HTML, JAX allows us to put HTML into JavaScript. So that is why the React is going to be simple to learn. The next one is the performance. Now, when you're talking about the performance, as Angular is the bidirectional data with bidirectional mapping with mutable data. That's the reason it is little bit slow, whereas whereas React is faster because it is very light framework. And one more difference here is that Angular, whenever you want to work with the Angular, then in the case of complex applications, all the UI components are actually downloaded to the browser to render the UI. That's where it is going to be little bit difficult. It is going to impact the performance. Also, it is going to use the real DOM. Yeah, is there any change in the particular element? It has to re-render the complete DOM. That is where the performance of the Angular is very slow when compared to the React JS. So React JS is greatly improved with the introducing of the virtual DOM, since all the virtual DOMs trees are lightweight and built on server, and load on the browser is reduced. Further, since the data binding process is unidirectional, bindings are not assigned watcher as in the case of Angular. Okay, so now let us go to the next feature. It is a dependency injection. Angular is the component based, which has to support, it has to work on top of the dependency injection. And also you have to learn the concept of the inversion of control, how to inject the object and how to frame or wire these objects as the runtime. Whereas in the case of React, we don't have support for the dependency injection. Next one is the state management. Angular component data is stored in the component properties. The parent component passes the data through its children's. Stage changes in one parts can be identified and recalculated, but in the larger app, it can cause a multi-directional tree series of updates, which will be difficult to track. So the features can be improved with the help of the state management libraries such as NGRX or RxJS, which would make the data flow is unidirectional. But in the case of React.js, React.js is each component has its own state. That means a React developer can create a special components for holding the state of the entire application or the particular part of it. That is where it is going to maintain the states, and the state management effectively maintained using the Redx or the MobX. So these are the two libraries which is going to help you to maintain the state of an React.js objects. Now coming to the app structure, Angular is a fixed and complex structure which is works based on the component based model view based architecture. That means Angular based is a three layers. One is the model, another one is the controller, and the last one is the view. An object is responsible for modeling is initialized by the controller and displayed with the view. Now in the case of React does not have any standard structure, but the structure of the React provides developer with the freedom of the choice. So there is no only right structure for the React app. However, the necessary to design the app structure at the beginning of the project makes it more difficult and longer to start. That's where React offers only the view layer, while model and controller are added with the usage of the other libraries. The architecture of the React app is based on the component based. So the code is made of React components which are rendered with React DOM libraries and directed in two ways. One is the functional, another one is the class based. So based on your learning curve, if you are familiar with the functional like a JavaScript, then you can go with the JavaScript based. If you are familiar with the class based like a ECMAScript 6 onwards we have the classes. If you are familiar with that, then you can go implement using the class based. So these are the high level differences between the Angular and React framework features. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.